Voter Integrity Project.
The Voter Integrity Project.
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 Jay Delancey, the director of the Voter Integrity Project.
Hello, Patriots. This module is on documentation, and I want to talk to you first about this is a military cliche. I'm sure you've heard it in your other life too, those of you who weren't military. The job's not complete until the paperwork's done. This is what documentation is. In the past, this has been a big deficiency. Observers, in 2012, for example, we saw a major push for observers in North Carolina. That was where I got my first taste of observing. And it was fun, but the problem was we weren't trained. We were, but we weren't. We were trained like a Secret Service agent is trained in counterfeit money. They're trained by looking at real money and seeing real money and knowing what real money feels like. And typically, now I can't speak to what training you may be getting from your party right now. I have chosen not to look at that information partially, and another side of me has been denied access to it by people who are supposedly on my side. So just look at this and take it a political party has no responsibility for what I'm telling you. I'm giving you information that hopefully will make you a more effective observer. And you can do with it what you want. I will plead with you at the end of this to take certain action with that form. But for now, let's talk about that form. To talk about where you find the form, we currently have it listed under the resources page. This may be a design flaw. I may move it over to the observer page, or put it in both places. But the form we're looking at, there's two forms. I'm going to go over the one for observers because we're going to modify this SNAP inspection. But the observer report, it's under resources, and this link click this link to download our incident report. So I will show you what our incident report looks like. What you're looking at basically is a weaponized observer form. It's a law enforcement grade observer form because it goes over information that will be critical when you're trying to unpack what you saw. And too often, this documentation is not completed until the end of the day when it's too late. You have to have a stack of these on hand. Now, some of these things you don't need to fill out right there on the spot, but let me get you straight to the area where you do. The date and time of the incident, this kind of information, date, time, county and precinct number, or wherever you're at, whatever the location is. And we drill down on that more. Poll location name, poll address, other precincts. That's just information that's probably NA. But here's the key, really get down to some serious information here. Any election officials or voters who are involved in this situation you observe, it is very important to find witnesses to whatever you see. It is critical that you find anybody who agrees with you on the facts. It's just, if you do it all by yourself, it's still useful, but it's not as useful as if you get an employee or somebody, another voter, somebody to agree with you, willing to go on record to agree with you. Now, we'll talk about that more in a minute because this is not a challenge. This is just documentation. This is non-confrontational, but you do need to know who else saw what you saw. Now, if you're an observer and you start talking to employees about what you saw, you're going to get in trouble. You have to talk to the chief judge and say, Chief Judge, may I, that employee, and point to the employee, that employee saw what I saw a minute ago. Could I get that employee's name? Could I talk with that employee? The chief judge may be like some of them in Wake County, may be a real jerk and say, no, you can't. Then you just describe that employee as best you can and ask the chief judge why, and get the chief judge on record as to why you will not. Okay, chief, then give me the name of that employee. Or you can't have that name. Chief, this is public information. I'm going to ask you again to give me the name of that employee, and then we'll call our attorneys if you are still not going to do it. You know, we can do it the hard way or the easy way. It's your choice. You know, they have to understand that you know the law and you know your rights as a citizen to observe your elections. These employees do not want you doing this. So it is somewhat of a hostile situation. And it's your goal is not to be confrontational. But if you run into a judge or a precinct polling official, I'm going to use the term chief judge, even though during early voting they have a different name for them. They're not, it's like site supervisor or something like that. There's a whole nother reason for that policy wise, and we're going to try and fix it. We've tried to fix it in the past, and a corrupt lawmaker with an R behind his name who has now been indicted and kicked out of the state house, he kept blocking us, and we're hoping that the new leadership there will see it our way, but that guy is gone. Okay, anyway, you're collecting the names here on this form and really getting the incident facts, and I cannot stress this, okay? Please describe factual events and not thoughts, feelings, or opinions. I'm sorry, your thoughts, feelings, and opinions cannot be confirmed. Therefore, you can talk about it later, but don't waste time on the paper talking about it. If someone intimidated you, say that. They intimidated me. Don't say, I felt intimidated, you know, you thumb-sucking liberal, you know, just write down, they intimidated me. How did they do that? What did they do? They got in my face. They got 6 inches from my face and began yelling at me. That's important. God forbid that will happen. Yet the pioneers in this whole industry in Houston, Texas, they literally, it was a polling place, obviously, that Sheila Jackson Lee needed very badly. So about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, some people dressed in all black with berets on, calling themselves the New Black Panthers, came in with baseball bats and ran out the white observers in those precincts. So is that going to happen in North Carolina? Lord, I hope not, but if it does, document it as best you can. That's all I can say. Even, you know, at some point you might decide, hey, they're breaking the law. I think I will too. I'm going to pull out my phone and film them. Be sure you know how to get your phone filming very quickly, like one touch, because things like that, that's going to be really important later. God forbid we get to that. But I'm talking about an incident report, and I cannot stress it enough. Document, document, document. Use quotation marks when using other people's words. And the most important factor here is time. And the time that matters is if you're watching a voter do something illegal, you want to make sure you know what time their ballot was fed through the tabulation machine. That's the only electronic record of what they did, unless you have an electronic poll book at the other end. If there's an electronic voting machine they're using, well, I'm sorry. We tried to get rid of them, but remember that politician I told you about earlier? He kept kicking the can down the road, and I don't know if they got rid of them or not. I think they have, but I can't swear to it. The point is, you want to document as accurate a time as you can that corresponds to a time they have on when the ballot went through the machine, because by doing that, you can actually help them. You can, if they really like shivagit about election fraud, the election investigations team could, they could unpack it down to that level and use, they could possibly retrieve that ballot depending on where you're at in the election. But they could also use that to identify the ATV and the form that the voter signed when they came in to vote. That's called the authorization to vote. It's a document. And if you've been through your party training, hopefully you already know that, so I'm not going to waste your time going over that. This is supplemental training. Document, document, document. Get those times down. Get those witnesses. Be as specific as you can. Now, I'm going to say a couple things about this. First off, do the documentation right away. Don't get mad. Don't confront anybody. Write down the facts as quick as you can. You want to go back later and get the names, like, you know, when the voter is out of there, maybe, because you're not going to stop that voter. You're not going to challenge that voter You're not going to confront that voter. You're going to document what the voter did or what the employee did. Because in some cases, this is an employee who is, I don't know if you saw if you're watching these in order and you saw the module about voters who don't know their name, you know, in the worst case situation, the employees got so frustrated, they snatched the piece of paper out of the voter's hand and they loaded the data in and just handed them the ATV and sent them on about their business. That's illegal. You go to the chief judge, after you document it, go to the chief judge and say, hey, chief, can I have a word with you? I just saw that employee read the, you know, either, I mean, what that might be is taking the piece of paper, or it might be the employee coaching the voter on their address. Now, a little of that is okay. Example, I've moved and I didn't realize my records are not updated. And I go in during early voting when they have records of the entire county right there at the check-in desk. And I say my name and I give my address, and they go, this is the way it's supposed to work. You give your address and they would say something along the lines of, have you recently moved? Do you have a different address? Were you registered to vote at a different address? What is that address? Those are the kinds of things they can ask you. What they cannot say is, I have you listed at 123 Barton Lane. You're going, wait a minute. Oh, that's my old address. Okay, that's me. No, that employee just broke the law. It's a procedural law. I mean, they're not going to go to jail for it, but it is a procedural violation. The penalty for that is the exact same penalty for you to pull out your phone and videotape the employee. I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying it's a standard. It's for breaking one of the generic aspects of the North Carolina election law. You wind up, I'm not practicing law without a license, but I'm told that that's a class 2 misdemeanor, any violations in that book. Of course, nobody's going to enforce that, send somebody to jail for it, but they can. If the employee is warned and continues to do it, that employee could face disciplinary measures or could be prosecuted for willful violation of their policies and procedures, which, hey, you know, it's that train runs both ways. An observer who breaks the law can be prosecuted. An employee who breaks the law can be prosecuted. Your key is to document it. And this is where it gets hairy. Document it, and then what? We'd like you to use our form for one reason. We have our address on it. There's a couple of things we have down at the bottom. This is not a sworn affidavit, but it does. I've run it past attorneys, and they've told me this will work in federal court. And the people who taught us this process, EIP Election Integrity Project California, taught us. They've used these forever, and these are actionable, and we need to compile these. So you're at some point that day, you need to document what happened, or you definitely documented it. Now you need to attest to it being true. Now this is where it really gets hairy, because we've run into big problems with insiders. In North Carolina, I know our politics are just as clean as the driven snow. I would argue that New Jersey has nothing on us, but the documentation that we know of, I don't want to go down too deep a rabbit trail. Our problem with this is that political actors, they get cute. They want to strategize your documents. I don't know what their motive is. It's mixed. Some of them they're good people, but they have mixed motives. What I would ask you to do, unless you're directly ordered not to by your party, in which case I would still urge you to keep records, keep copies of these forms. I would ask you to send us a copy of it just for our records. Scan it and send it to us, or mail it to us. We want to collect this information in the aggregate, in the big picture, because we can use that to shift public policy in favor of more sane, less fraud-friendly election laws. Because I get sick of election employees. They're quoted all the time in the media. There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud. We know this fraud is bigger than they have evidence of it. Why? Because nobody documents it. If you don't document a crime, you don't investigate it. If you don't investigate it, you don't make a criminal referral. If you don't make a criminal referral, you don't get the district attorney on record to either accept it or decline it. If the DA won't do their job because it's such a small penalty, I got jaywalkers to prosecute. I don't have time to prosecute vote fraud. You got corrupt DAs. You've got partisan DAs. You've got people with mixed motives. You may love your DA. Oh, he's a Republican. He's a good guy. Really? Yeah. How many voter fraud cases has he prosecuted? Just say it. Find that we have a big problem in getting them to do that. This is why we need a copy of this form. If you document stuff, yeah, give it to your party, but get us a copy of it, please. Yeah, you're on your own. I can't control you. I'm just asking you to do that, because if you get it to us, we will use it for policy differences. We will also use it for when your local county stifles you, crushes you under the weight of even your party leadership throwing you under the bus. This is a nonpartisan issue. It should be. Election fraud should be a nonpartisan issue. I don't care who's doing the fraud. You look at our history, you see we've got a lot of prosecutions of Republicans. It's not that we're anti-Republican. It's just that election officials, they do not prosecute Democrats. It's a double standard. We'd like to break through that. And part of that is with your help in getting us this information so we can get to the truth. Okay, that's enough about documentation as an observer. I'll have another section on documentation as a voter. But for now, that's it.